Okay, so that's what you put in the will. Now you have a choice, don't you? If you have assets in Turkey, you can make a will here in Turkey, or you can make a will back home, which covers the assets in Turkey.
Yeah.
If you want to make a will in Turkey, how do you do it?
We have different type of wills, which is covered by our civil code. You can make a verbal will, which I haven't really seen from my entire professional life.
That goes back 100 years.
I believe so.
Yes.
You can have a written will, but it has to be handwriting, and it sometimes could be really complicated because it may not be understood. So the most common and advisable type of will be the notarized will, because it is binding. You are signing before an official authority. So if you want to have a will in Turkey, you will just go to a notary with 2 witnesses. And if you are a non-national, you need a sworn translator, which will be provided by the notary. And you will just give the details of your will, and they will draft it, or most likely the solicitors are, lawyers are dealing with the draft, and the notary is just stamping and approving it.
Now let's just take those in turn. Verbal will, it has every mark of disaster written all over it. It really is not a thing to do.
Yeah.
Very difficult to prove what was said. Horrible. Handwritten wills, and some people are very tempted by the idea of a handwritten will because they can just write down on a piece of paper, I want this, this and this to happen, and it's private and simple. But really, that too is not a good idea.
No. In terms of proving.
In terms of proving it, and also the people who are writing those wills aren't lawyers, and very often they end up being unclear, and they give rise to arguments. And frankly, lawyers make a lot of money out of handwritten wills, so perhaps we shouldn't knock them too hard. But really, it is not a good way of doing it. The simple, easy, reliable, safe way is to go to a notary and make a will in front of the notary.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, I think it is a much better idea to draft a will with an assistant of a lawyer, because you have to make sure that what you are putting in your will shouldn't be in contrary with the code.
Yes.
Otherwise it will be invalid.
And you just use the magic words that make it clear. Which the individual may not have been thinking about.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's if you want to make a will in Turkey. You go to the notary. Either you take with you a will that's been prepared by your lawyer, or that you just tell the notary what you want and he writes it all down. You need 2 witnesses. Does it matter who they are?
No, it doesn't matter. So 2 witnesses.
It could be your lawyer, it could be even the clerical officer working in the notary's office.
The clerks are really reluctant to do that because they don't want to really get involved, because some of the documents are prepared by them anyway, so they can't be the witness. But any party, like your neighbors, your friends, if you are signing in Turkey, I would rather to bring a Turkish person, because then the translator will be applying to the witnesses as well, so it will add up some further cost on top of your will. So Turkish neighbors, Turkish friends would work really good.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if you haven't got any Turkish neighbours or Turkish friends, your own national friends, but it mustn't be someone who's going to inherit from you.
Of course.
If you leave everything to your children,
Third party will
cannot be your children.
Yeah.
Okay, so you go to the will and to the notary, and you've mentioned that there'll be a translation. That's required by law. The notary's office will arrange for an official translator if they do not think you speak Turkish well enough to understand.
Exactly, and bear in mind you cannot bring your own translator. It has to be registered with that notary, so you will just leave it to the notary.
Yes, and of course there's a cost associated with that. We'll come back to cost in a minute. So that is the simple process of making a Turkish will. Once you've made the will, what happens to it?
You get a copy, like an original one, and one original copy is sent to our headquarters of the notaries, so it's going to be kept there.
Yes, so that effectively the notaries keep one copy, you keep another copy.
Yeah.
And is there a wills registry in Turkey where where wills are officially recorded?
Yeah, the notaries are doing that.
Oh, the notaries operate the wills registry. Okay, so if someone is looking for a will, they can just go to a central notarial office and they will be able to say, yes, there was a will in this person's name.
Yeah.
Good. What does it cost?
Cost depends on the length of the document,
Yes.
because in Turkey notaries are charging per
Per
a word.
word.
Yeah,
And sometimes they can be very long.
yeah, and also the puntos might be a little bit
Yes.
like a bigger. So it depends on the length, but I would assume, like say, if I need to give you at least rough figure, per person they are charging,
Yes.
and only the wills can be done by person. I mean,
Yes.
you cannot gather together
Can't do a
and
joint
then,
will.
no.
Yeah.
So I would say about maybe $300, like a $400.
And that's for the notary and for the translator.
Like all inclusive.
Yes.
If it's a very short will, it will presumably like a little bit less than that. So
And the will, the fee for the lawyer to prepare the will.
it's separate. I would say like a $200-300.
Yes.
Yeah.
So not a hugely expensive thing to
No.
do, especially when you consider the benefits that flow from it. Okay, now the other way of doing it, of course, is to make a will back in your own country that specifically covers the assets in Turkey. What is the advantage or disadvantage of dealing with your things in Turkey via a will in your own country?
The advantage, of course, we will gather that will with a correct like a procedure, and we will be enforcing that will through the courts.
Yes.
So it will be still binding.
Still be binding.
And it will make it much easier in terms of like a distribution. But on the other hand, as it's a non-national document, it could be complex sometimes, and if you define like every single asset in a very long will with all like a options, I mean who dies first, what it goes then,
Yes.
so it makes it complex. So sometimes experts can be a little bit confused.
And if you are going to use a will in your own country, it's important to deal specifically with the assets in Turkey. So as a separate clause in your will, you say I leave my house in England to my whoever, but you need to say separately, or it's better to say separately, I leave my house in Turkey to so-and-so, my car in Turkey to so-and-so, my bank account in Turkey to so-and-so.
Yeah, what would I say is, if you are making a very general will, all my assets going to my wife, then that's simple.
Yes.
If you are just making a distribution by yourself, I think putting the Turkish assets separately would be very necessary.
And of course it's also fine if you say I leave everything to my wife, but if my wife dies before me, then I leave it all to my children in equal shares. That works fine, because that's simple and easy to understand.
Yeah.
Because the big disadvantage of using your national will is delay, isn't it? Because under the Turkish system, you as the lawyer in Turkey can't do anything really until the affairs in Germany or England or America have been finalised, until the grant transferring the assets in that country has taken place. And that takes months and months and months very often. And you've only got 6 or 8 months to pay the taxes here in Turkey, otherwise you're on a penalty.
Yeah, that's correct.
So almost guaranteed, if you use a foreign will to deal with your affairs in Turkey, you're going to have tax penalties because you won't be able to pay the taxes in time.
That is correct.
So I think for that reason alone, it makes sense to make a will here in Turkey, dealing with your affairs in Turkey, because you can then get on with that.
Yeah, I think it will make it more quick, as you mentioned. In that case, we will still need some documentation from abroad, like death certificate, birth certificate, or marriage certificate. But we will not be waiting the will to be executed, and the probate, like a grant of probate, will be all like a past. So I believe it will make the process more easier and quicker.
And the cost of making the will here in Turkey is likely to be less than the penalties you'll pay on the tax.
And also it will be less than the translation fee of
and,
your...
and a lot less than the translation fee.
Because it is costing quite a lot of money, because your wills, I mean the abroad will, what we faced before, they are like 6, 8, 10 pages long usually, and we got it like apostilled, and we need to get it like in Turkey and get it translated, so it is notarized as well. So
it can cost you a couple of $1,000s easily to have that process completed. So so the advice really then is, if you own assets in Turkey, make a will here in Turkey. That's simple, isn't it?
Simple and easy.
And easy. Başak, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, John.
We hope you found that interesting and useful. If you did, as always, please like this video or follow the channel. Do remember that Başak has written a much longer written guide to making wills in Turkey, and that's available at www.guides.global. And Başak is also the co-author of our book, How Things Really Work in Turkey, and that too is available for purchase through www.guides.global. Hope you've enjoyed this. Whether you have or not, we hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.